Ich bin der Schlüsselmacher. Aber ich mache nicht einfach nur Schlüssel. Ich verschaffe dir Zugang zu den besten Geschichten der Welt. Denn meine Schlüssel bringen dich überall hin und können alles mit dir machen. Ist der hier für dich?
Unlock great stories. Kanal Plus. Stream großartige europäische Serien und Filme.
Wonderful. Now, my name is Ita Francesca. I am based in Vienna and Munich, and I'm a music journalist. And I would actually like to to have the panelists introduce themselves. I have to add, though, that one of our panelists is running a bit late because U6 does things it shouldn't do, I don't know. So maybe Regina.
Yes, so my name is Regina, and I am the project coordinator of MEWEM Europe in Austria. So MEWEM Europe is a European funded project that is led by 6 partners in 7 countries, and I'm taking care of all the things that are happening in Austria, the mentoring, the matching, the workshops that are happening, and yes, I think that's it.
Yeah, hello, my name is Lynn Meisner. I am the project manager of a program called Pop NRW, which supports the most promising acts of the region North Rhine-Westphalia in Germany, short NRW. And I'm also the co-founder and chairwoman of the regional music women network, Music NRW Women. And I'm a committee member of the nationwide network Music Women Germany. Besides that, I'm a trained musician and a cultural manager.
Hi everyone, my name is Marie Foll, my pronouns are she, her. I'm one of the project manager, of Key Change, and I'm also the development lead. Key Change is a gender equality initiative that has been going on for 5 years now. Globally, it started as a European project. We are still operating as a European project, but we have expanded worldwide. I can explain way more about this in a minute, so I'm not going to go full on onto that, but we have a talent development program in 12 countries. Unfortunately, not in Austria at the moment, but it does cover quite a few other places, including Germany. And you will see also quite a few key change artists and key change innovators at at Waves. So if you don't know them, just ask me and I will point them to you. So you can also talk with other people than me who have been to Key Change or will be part of Key Change right
now. Thank you so much. Now because yesterday I was having dinner with friends and I was talking about this panel and and one person, a guy, asked me, so Flinter networks, cool stuff, but why are they necessary? And I mean, I kind of went all out, but in your words, why are Flinter networks necessary? Whoever wants to start.
Well, networking is one thing that we all know is very important, especially for Flinter persons in the music business, because there haven't been that many networks in the past, and of course there are some now, but there's still a way to go. Like we all know about the gender pay gap, and in Germany, for example, it's 19%, and in the music business it's 25%. The difference between the income. And so, just to name one of the facts, there are many things that are not right, and these networks help to empower, to support, to educate, and also to make Flinter persons visible.
Yeah.
Marie, sorry.
Well, thank you. we need just a moderator just for that moment, you know, for this hesitation. Sorry. So that's really at the core of Key Change. That's why we started to begin with. So about 7-8 years ago in the UK, Vanessa Reed set up a fund, actually 10 years ago now, called Women Make Music. And again, 10 years ago, it was really one of the first funds generally from a public, well, semi-public institution, from a charity, supporting specifically women in the music business. She did that because she started looking at all the statistics in the UK and seeing also who were applying for grants, and she saw that there was really just mostly male, so male identifying people applying for grants, and she was like, okay, there is a deficit in terms of diversity, in terms of what is being created. We are not supporting, I mean, if you look at how many people create music in the UK but do not apply for grants, so that was the initial idea on why she started with that. And a lot of this started also with market research, as you were saying, statistics, just to be able to say, like, there is a deficit of representation, there is a deficit of support. And there are many reasons for that, and we can explore them further. But so the idea of bringing people together is also to tackle those deficits. You mentioned the gender pay gap. There is also a deficit in representation on women and gender minorities producing music. In the statistic you have in the US, there are 8% of the producers who are identifying as women, so it means also that 92% are not. And then you're like, okay, why and how come? So one of the results of this is also to bring in the terms that we use with Key Change on women and gender minorities. You talk in German with Flinter, and we are now expanding to the US, and we are starting to talk about gender expensive people. So vocabulary, another topic. Anyway, sorry, I'm going on a tangent.
But still a very important topic, and it was gender
expensive.
Ah, okay. Mm-hmm.
Also to not corner people into a minority, and not to, because they are not necessarily a minority, because then it means there is a majority. So these binary terms, to try to avoid those generally. Going back to the importance of networks for Flinta people or for women and gender minorities, there is what we see with Key Change. So we have 3 lines of work. One is a talent development program where we have 75 people taking part per year in the program. The other one is advocacy, and the third one is on building a community through the Key Change pledge. So we have close to 600 signatories at this point. All of this on building a community and making sure that women and gender minorities come together is what I find the most magical, actually, in Key Change, where when we bring 75 people who have felt unrepresented, underrepresented, invisible in their context, and we bring them in one room, and we're like, yeah, just seriously, we have handpicked you because we know exactly that you have been through that, but you will grow. And you see them just be like, oh, I'm a weirdo, but you're a weirdo too, that's so fucking cool, and let's do stuff together. And this is really where you see this power of a network, to just know you're not the only one who has been through whatever you have been through, and to be able to develop those alliances as Flinta, but also then to find allies outside and people who recognize this need for coming together and developing a diverse music industry and something that needs a change. So yeah. But please, go ahead.
Yes, so basically I totally can agree with everything that you said on why it is necessary. It's just about these structural inequalities that need targeted solutions, and what Key Change is doing on a bigger scale in terms of also addressing festivals and other organizations. MEWEM is focused on basically promoting women and Flinter persons into leadership positions, because actually the music business in general is quite balanced when it comes to all of the work, the types of work that is done, but when it comes to leadership, it's an extreme difference. And so basically to empower Flinter to go into these leadership positions, our hope is that also festivals, clubs, lineups will be more diverse when Flinters are in power.
Absolutely, absolutely. And hi. No worries. Just, yeah? Go. Wonderful. Now, we were just talking about why Flinter networks are necessary, but maybe you could start just introducing yourself.
Okay. My name is Mayasa, and I'm actually here to present the legacy of my colleagues from the arts. Their names are Sherry Abraham, Ivana Pilic, and Susanne Ernst. My name is Mayasa Kreit, and I see here I'm introduced as Königin der Macht, which is my alter ego, or like, so to say, a fictive female queer radicalist rapper. And I'm happy to be here. I hope this is enough for now.
Fantastic, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, what I wanted to, because Marie, you mentioned very briefly, like how hard it is to find support and also funding. Why would you say, why is it so hard?
Okay, again, like you're
The
opening it.
easiest
Yeah,
question.
the easiest question. Well, I mean, you touch upon it also on leadership position. Like, in any industry, in any business, in life generally, I mean, there are gatekeepers, there are people in power, and all of what we are going to talk about, or what we are talking about generally, is about changing the status quo and making room for others. It's not about taking stuff from someone, but making room for others. But it does challenge the status quo. It challenges patriarchy. It challenges the models in which we work and live. And funders, and that's also what we have when we have expanded the pledge of Key Change. Funders and people who sit on boards, on commissions, they have a tendency, and we all have that, to have a bias, to select what they know, to select what looks like them, to select what reflect their own identity, their own heritage. And it's absolutely normal, and it's nothing to be ashamed about, but it's something that if you want to have a culturally diverse life and a society and that represents the diversity of society, you need to be able to expand this further. In order to do that, you need to change the composition of who sits on the committee. You need to change the board, you need to change the leadership positions. And this is, so you mentioned briefly we work on festivals with Key Change, that's true. That's where we started 5 years ago with a pledge where 7 festivals started to commit to gender equity on their lineup, and saying that within 5 years they would aim to be gender balanced. And I mean, they have achieved that, but again, it was a topic. But we have expanded from the festivals only to any organization in the music industry, and especially looking at CMOs, looking at funders, looking at radio stations, and to say like, okay, the people who make the decision, who select what's going to be programmed, who get funding, those need to be diverse. If at the end, on the other spectrum, of the artists being supported, we want diversity as well. So that's, yeah, the whole ecosystem of the music industry needs to change for support, so for funding as well.
Absolutely. Regina, would you like to add something because you're so ready? No?
No,
Okay. Now, Marie, you already talked about this, but maybe to the others, and I know you also have a presentation prepared. What of your network and how you're trying to achieve this?
Yeah, with Music Women Germany, it's a network and a database. So first thing we did was when we think about all these arguments that are always held against, for example, festival quotas, for example, that people say, yeah, we don't know that many qualified female identifying or non-binary artists. And then we say, yeah, but there's this database. You can just look them up. And it's not only the artist, it's also for media people, for women who are organizers, for producers. So the idea was to have this database where you can look everybody up. And yeah, with this, make it easier to find people and make them visible. So one of our main aims is to make people visible. And then we have these regional networks, because Music Women Germany is like an umbrella organization, but the main goal is to have in all the regions, all the federal states in Germany, which are 16, to have regional networks, so people in their region can be active, can do their own thing, and we all work together. So we have also something very close to the people and not an organization that is just somewhere in Berlin or Hamburg, but also, like I said, in North Rhine-Westphalia, for example. So we connect, and that also makes it easier if you want to make a suggestion for a job, or you need a technician while you're on tour, then maybe you're connected with those people already. This is also the getting connected is the idea.
So for MEWEM, the core of MEWEM is not necessarily the network, even though that always, fortunately, always comes with the mentoring program. But basically, the approach is to find and select Flinter that are already have gathered some experience in the business, and then find Flinter that really just want to learn more and get experience from them. And it's a setup of meeting like once or twice a month, and it can be totally individualized, and it's very open also for personal needs. And around this mentoring is basically workshops and networking sessions. And luckily, since MEWEM Europa was funded, the last edition was funded by the EU, there was also some international aspects of it. So mentors could go to Berlin for a networking session and for workshops. And we also went to CO Pop in Cologne. So that aspect really enriches like the network that is built upon the mentoring.
Mm-hmm. And Mayasa?
Yes.
What is the main aim, objective of your network, and how you're trying to achieve it?
Yeah, as I'm representing the arts, it stands for a critical concept of diversity, and I think we can just have a look on seeing who's not here. And also in representing diversity, I see a very wide space. So, which of course is very interesting how we are also navigating here. Sorry again for the being late, and I'm so happy to see so many wonderful faces again. Thanks for the invitation. But speaking of the arts, and I'm actually also humbled to introduce the work of the arts, because it stands for a discrimination-sensitive and intersectional work for dialogical concepts of and to create decentralized strategies, above all building collective thinking spaces, and also to think, okay, how can power and cultural spaces be decentralized, and how can we support and build bridges within artists and institutions, as institutions can be extremely violent and excluding spaces as well. And so presenting this work to me is also interesting, because as Königin der Macht, I created this figure in order to be very direct and very like straightforward and revealing violent spaces, as also the one we're sharing here, as it's including apparently. Maybe just very short about the arts again. It is a fake it until you make it project. So the arts faked from 2001 to be physical of it is to claim justice, to diversify, to democratize, so to say, also the cultural landscapes. And yeah, from here now.
Thank you. Does anyone have a question or comment? Anything to add? Fine,
please.
You can take your time. Take your time. Now, Mayasa, I'm super grateful that you're here on this panel, because you also represent the artistic point of view, basically. Because I think, I mean, for me, you're most famous for Mamageddon. Which, I mean, you can probably describe it better, which is a performance, a queer feminist performance with dance and music, rap. And yes, and I wanted to ask you, what do you think? How can, like artistic works, how can they enter the discussion? What can they change as well? And also, at this point, how did you? Because I feel that for these kinds of performances, so performances from Flinters to usually like visited, and people who buy the tickets are also Flinters. How can we like invite and engage cis males as well, and
I don't want to engage them
because we really do need them.
Yes. Well, this is thank you for that question and the many questions inside of the question. Basically, if I look at the performance landscape and also like the music landscape. I feel like we're so also faked into a reality that now kind of white cis hetero men feel like the minority and nobody, and all the fans, they're so queer, they're so feminized. And I keep having these discussions where I decided for myself, I want to make a performance that is not feeding the white male gaze. So I was actually trying to, and I was hearing this a lot from theaters and places that would book and say like, yeah, we are reaching out to the Flinter community, but they're not coming. So and it was interesting, this was not the case within Mamageddon, although like, yeah, it was also a lot of like problematic topics within the performance, of course, because I was mimicking and imitating a lot of the masculinized violence or the masculine violence or patriarchy. But at the end of the day, I decided to finally not do a performance to engage and to invite, and because I think our safer spaces, the stages for us are so limited, and here again, here I am, as I have to navigate through these white spaces, to those racist spaces, to these homophobic spaces, being the educator for you, no. Like I decided not to do this educational work because I think there's so much, it's also not about education, it's about a willingness to share power, it's about the willingness to see structures, and I think Flinter voices, especially in music, in arts, and whatever genre, are so anxiety-provoking because we do not speak from a structured space. We do not speak from a space where like, you can navigate with us. So I think this is what triggers a lot of fear. And yes, I'm one human being that expresses also like vulnerabilities, powers, and I'd like to share and speak with to the communities I'm part of.
Mm-hmm. I just forgot the question. Yeah.
From two.
Because
I think it was why it's necessary to also engage cis hetero
and I think yes, exactly,
men.
and I think it's very legit what you just said, to have to actually like have designated spaces for Flinters as well, because we need our own safe spaces. But yeah, maybe, and that's also I think very cool because for what you represent here, because we have Regina from Meetup, which is very which works on a very individual basis, and then we have Key Change and also Music Women, Music Germany, what?
Music Women Germany.
Music Women Germany. Sorry. Which works more, I mean, especially Key Change with festivals and corporations. I love that we have these two approaches also here, and I think both of them are necessary to really make a change in the whole. And what I wanted to ask is maybe the others, how can we really engage non-Flinter people and make them realize that this is not just about us?
I mean, honestly, this is a challenge, a huge challenge, because as much as I think that Flinter-only spaces are extremely important, it doesn't have to negate another space, because in reality, that's what we're confronted with, you know. But I also feel like we had a lot of networking sessions and receptions hosted by MEWEM that were open for everybody, and I got asked by a lot of men if they that they're not coming because it's only for women, right? And I think maybe it's also a matter of communicating that this is really about all of us, and that these spaces, if you are invited into them, they're not intimidating, but I think it's really, I mean, it's very hard to communicate. But yeah, so that's what I experienced so far.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if I mean, you've asked quite a lot of questions at the same time, and I could probably talk for an hour on every one of them, so I'm a bit like, okay, which one am I going to go for? But I think first of all, I mean, we are here with our own identities, and we are representing them for sure, but at the same time the burden of being a queer person, or whatever identity you will bring to the table is not the one that you shouldn't have a burden of that on trying to be either tokenized or used on the panel to be able to represent all the voices of women in music or this kind of thing. So that's just to park it somewhere. I wanted to mention it because there is this risk very often in those conversations that we're having. I think, I mean, what I see with Key Change from the experience I've had now for 4 years working on the project is that we have carved out space for people to be able to meet on their own, through their own identity without any expectation that they have to produce anything, where we don't ask them to perform, we don't ask them to speak, we just ask them to be there. And so we provide workshop and all kind of capacity building because that's part of the program, but basically, and I'm realizing I'm recorded, but anyhow, what's happening is that this is not the focus. The focus is really just to create that space for people to be there together without any expectation and without any results. When you have public funding, saying that to a funder is like, yeah, why? But anyhow, this is really important within Key Change, so we can create that space without being a parallel space completely that doesn't engage with the rest of the industry. And I think there is this need to not disengaging completely, to not exist parallel. It is important to create that space for us to be able to talk and to exist, but at the same time, and that's what we do then in the rest of the program with the talent development program, we also, the kickoff meeting is just for our participants. It's not linked to an event. It's not linked to a music event. It's just to make sure that people connect and can have time together. The rest of the time is through festivals, through conferences where we bring people at different events and we make sure that there is this connection. We ask our festival partners to not program our artists and our innovators on the women panel, so to say, the one we are having now. That's really for the team to be there and to represent those voices, but we try very much to make sure that our participants are recognized for their expertise. So if you are a master engineer, you are going to speak about that. If you're a manager, we are going to put you on a manager panel and this kind of stuff, rather than cornering you in a pigeonhole and saying like, hey, you are the woman in the room, or whatever other identity you bring. So, and I think in that way we can engage with different identities, also with cis men, to also break open that door and say like, okay, we want to be represented everywhere, not only on the women in music panels, not only on those discussions. We need to be part of every discussion because we are part of this industry and you can't corner us there. So the balance between the two in the program is quite interesting, and that's very welcomed by a lot of our participants. That's something that they really value, because at the end of the program, at the end of the 1 year, what they take out of it is a network of people. I mean, the festival, they could have gone without us in a way. And so the network and knowing that they have peers and that they can go to another country and be like, hey, I'm doing a tour there, I need a tour manager who I can trust, who is safe, and so on. So there is this network, but at the same time without disengaging completely. And that's the balance. However, finding allies, training people, making sure that cis men and anyone else who has power, also people from another generation, whatever identity they have, that they don't feel threatened, but that they engage with us, that's still something we are working on. And I'm welcoming all the experience and expertise that there is in this room, also from all of you, to know how we can do that better and how to make sure that this audience here today can also become more diverse than preaching to the choir. Yeah, a bit, yeah, sorry.
Okay. Yeah, maybe also like to be a bit more specific, like the performance project Armageddon is not a project of the arts, and I'm here in a double role. Of course, I think, for instance, institutions or like bureaus like the arts are very supportive because they're navigating like our voices that are very clear, many of our voices or my voice, in order to build bridges. But what I think, like with all this topic of diversity and how it is also tokenizing, feminized, racialized bodies, I think it's important, and this is what I like about the arts a lot, is that it's about questioning also privileges and open spaces to talk about this, which is extremely uncomfortable. It is not that, for instance, if we speak about male cis privilege, that they're like that the performances that I do, that they're excluded outside of the door. No, it's not like this. Actually, I have also a quite big fan base of hetero cis men that are, yes, that try to enter a discussion about masculinity, for instance. But I think allyship, as we speak of allyship, we have to take it more seriously in order to transform something. And as I see mentorships, I think all these things you're doing is so supportive and so important. But when I think of it, I feel like it's an intervention of kind of restorative justice. But if I think of transformative justice, we have to think of the structures. And this is, I think, also what you said, is like there has to be a change. I entered a Museum X the other day, and they were like seeing me, and there's so many projections going, like, the first thing the person said is like, oh, we're not racist.
What?
Yes, exactly. It's like, hello, we're not racist. And you know, it was Stefan, Martin, and Uwe from Germany, and this was the diversification. And I said, hey, listen, it's just, you know, it's a pattern. It's a discriminatory pattern in the institution if you don't have people that are like having different backgrounds. Let's not individualize. For me, it's not about I have like my war ongoing against every hetero-cis man, no. And this is also the discourse of the arts to say we have to look at the structure to see how can transformative justice look like. And all the interventions for any other forms of, restitution or like visibilizing, democratizing are very welcomed. But I think we have to look very closely and do not forget like the systems we're navigating in and the power relations. And I think this is where the Flinter BIPOC queer community is doing a lot of work that is not paid, that is not quantified, is very exhausting, and it makes a difference if a Flinter artist, BIPOC artist goes out, feminized body, and speaks out loudly. I mean, in the time of the pandemic, it was so hard to do activism due to this racist and right-wing backlash. I mean, we've seen a lot of violence going on the streets. So what does it mean for the othered to be in a discourse outspoken? And it's very common that people say, hey, you're an activist. And when I say, hey, yeah, but I need to get paid, I'm not institutionalized, it's like, oh, I thought you're doing activism. Like, it's very interesting how this violence works and that there are very little spaces where the human dignity of people is put on safety and security and sanity and love and care for those people is real. Even when they say like, you bring a big network of people. I say I bring a community that I care for, not only a network of people. Like this is also so interesting how also Flinter becomes so commercialized and cool and it's the thing and needs to be institutionalized. At the same time, I feel like our bodies are like, or many of the different bodies are so easy to be presented without actually, thinking what it means for the person herself. And this is why I think not safe space, but safer spaces also create those spaces, and also to have like the representation logic should not only serve the state or serve society. I think we should also like have a chance to be in public spaces and see each other and acknowledge each other's presence. Also on stage.
Yeah, what I found very interesting is what you said about like activism and not getting paid and stuff. Because I recently had a discussion about an activist who now rejects the term activist for herself because she is then devalued, kind of. But she'd rather call herself an expert. Because experts are more likely to get paid, and I think that's also very weird. And but sorry, I kind of interrupted you as well.
No, I was just thinking about that. There's a lot of translation still to do because the structure that we want to change hasn't changed that much yet. Although in our bubble it seems like there's a lot of networks and we all talk to each other and we have safer spaces and we try to make the world a better place, but we still have to translate to the ones who don't understand it yet, or have to make them see that in the end we all benefit from it. And that's why the allyship program, for example, is I think very important, also getting in dialogue with each other and not only with ourselves, because then nothing's going to change. And it's, of course, it's not all nice, because then, I mean, we have things that we demand, and that also means that people have to go, maybe. So, yeah, it's a tough. This has so many levels, this question, but I think, yeah, it's important to keep in mind that there's also a translation that has to be done, because otherwise people feel excluded and then they don't listen anymore, and we want them to listen.
Yes, very true. And also, what I think what we all agree on is the like the basic need for structural changes, because I keep talking to friends and colleagues. I mean, I've talked to, I think, Marsha like 1,000 times, and Kati behind her as well, that as long as like the structures don't change, as long as we don't have a diverse like juries and I don't know, boardrooms and like leaders in general, nothing's going to change. We can still, I can keep talking in my living room to my colleagues and friends, but how can we make structural changes? What is needed?
A lot of things. I just wanted to react on a few things that have been said before I go on to structural change. But I think what is transpiring through all this discussion for me is also the mental health and the precarity that goes with it from I mean, be it on activists, but also, I mean, principally on artists and musicians and on people who do this kind of work. We end up, I mean, as I was saying, pigeonholed in a certain way. We are being perceived in a certain way. Right now, gender equality is hot because it is being funded, so it's quite easy to go into this conversation, much easier than 5 years ago. But still, it's very much like you have a stamp and basically nobody wants to talk to anything else than that with me, like the quality of the music. No, let's talk about, yeah, women, like, you know, like the problem where you're like, come on, like, I can also just enjoy music. I can go and talk critically about something else. And so that's always quite difficult. And what you were saying, indeed, on this the burden that is put on you, and all those questions around activism, the fact that it's not being paid, the fact that it's extremely precarious, it is exhausting.
It's dangerous. Allyship, even when allyship is connected to a lot of violence, and I think this is romanticized activism in arts, because if you really take it seriously to be an ally in the topic of trans rights, human rights, etc., and you share your privileges, it's not fun.
And it's uncomfortable, and it's, yeah, like at the end of the day, it's something where you don't feel necessarily very right in your skin when you do all of this. Coming to your question around structural change, so in different countries of different things being put in place. What has been really interesting over the pandemic is that because people had time, debatable, but they had a massive change in their life in any case, reflections happened. A lot of people started questioning, like, okay, the normal is definitely like burning me out. I don't feel safe. I don't feel okay. This is actually not okay at all, and I don't want to go back to that. In a few countries, including in France, there has been change within the institution. So at the moment of the creation of the Centre National de la Musique, so which is a fusion of different organizations to create a national center for music, they implemented a department for gender equality, and within that department they also funded it structurally within the organization, and they gave it a mandate to be able to act on certain things on the structuration of the music industry in France. Obviously the music industry there, as everywhere, is not so much on the public spectrum of things, but much more with private money, so you can have only that much control with public money. However, what they've done is that if you want to apply for any kind of grant from the public sector in France for music, you have to follow a training on sexual violences. You have to. It's all. You have to follow it, and you cannot just sign a sheet of paper. You actually have to spend 3 hours. Again, 3 hours in your life to talk about sexual violence is very little, very, very, like, it's just a drop in the water, but it's really also about starting those conversations, making sure you can't escape it and just be like, no, but I'm an ally, I'm the good guy, come on, like, you trust me, you know me, it's fine. It's like, yeah, but what do you do if someone of your staff is going to assault someone? Who is in charge? Is it your responsibility to assault someone? Who is in charge? Is it your responsibility legally? Going going through all those questions, and then people are like, oh, actually, I don't know the answer. Well, then follow the training, you will know the answer. So that's what the institution has done in France in order to say, like, okay, you want public money, you have to be part of this system, you have to start changing from the inside, and that's a micro step. It's absolutely nothing, but at the same time, and that's what we do also a lot with Key Change, with the pledge, it's just starting those conversations, opening the door, making sure that even if it's for show, we still are like, okay, even I know like your intention is not real. I know you actually, like you don't necessarily really believe in the fight for gender equality. You are not an ally, but if I don't make this step and I have funding to do it and I don't want to leave it on someone who doesn't get paid to do it, I'm like, okay, I'm being paid as a freelancer, but still I'm being paid to do that. I'm going to go in this conversation and have this talk and make sure that 3 months later, I will send you an email again and be like, hey, remember me? Like, let's talk again. Let's have this conversation. All that, you know, and then finding more money to support more people. That's also part of the structuration, to make sure like whatever privilege I end up having on working 5 years on this, that the next network, the next people, the people who go through Key Change, that we continue supporting them so that the people I can reach is only a very small pool, but then with that, with the structuration of the people I have around me, the people who are being trusted because I've been going through the stamp of quality of Key Change, and the same with Mayhem, and the same with a lot of network at this point, is also making sure that the privilege we gain, we continue giving it and paying it forward to the next association, community, whatever group it is that wants to pick up that discussion. And especially, and this is, I mean, you pointed it out right out of the gate, Key Change is white. We have very few people in the staff who are not white, and this is definitely something where we have been called out, where we are like, okay, concretely, yes, we have to work on that. We are working on that on the panelists we have. We are working on it on the people we hire, on short-term jobs and so on, but structurally, because of how the project is funded, it's completely impossible to do it right away, and it's also this kind of, it will take time, but at the same time, this is right on the list on, okay, we have to represent this and we have to implement the change within ourselves, support the next ones, and continue, making this wave of change and supporting the other communities through that.
Yeah, talking about funding, I think what is also very important is to have like a prerequisite of diversity in a form or another. To get funding, you need to have a certain I don't know. You have to have how do you say, a focus on diversity in whatever way is possible, and if not, then you don't get funded. I think that will be something that I would love, which is actually happening, which has happened in Germany for one round of funding. Just as an FYI. Yes, structural changes.
Yeah, I just want to say on that. I think it's totally true that, as Marie said, like, gender equality programs were kind of hot. There was a lot of funding for that in the past years, and still is. And I feel like it might have happened that also this form of inequality was highlighted a lot, and we forgot, or within these programs, definitely MEWEM, about intersectional issues. Not necessarily forgot about it, but definitely wasn't a prerequisite for starting the project. And I think going forward, we have to definitely work on that, and also engage with other institutions. We also had 2 D-Arts workshops, and I feel like it's very important to interconnect all of these efforts and to really learn from each other in this case.
I think it's very interesting that some of you said that there's a lot of funding for Flinter networks or for diversity projects. I don't think it's the case yet. I mean, we got funded, there's MEWEM, there's Key Change, but yeah, those are a few. And it's all project-based, so there's no certainty how things are going to work out, and that makes it also very difficult to plan long-term or to really make changes. And to your question about how to maybe establish some some ground rules or something. Like there was this conference that Music Women Germany hosted this year called Gender Equality Now, and it was a dialogue basically between musicians, music industry experts and politicians, and there was a 20-point plan that the 130 people made who came within the discussions, and this plan was presented as direct claims, and things that were in there were like what you just talked about, the quota for intersectionality, binding diversity criteria for committees, juries, boards, and especially when it comes to public funding, because that's also a very important thing. I mean, it's public funding and it's, yeah, it should be for everybody. And there's also this problem with the language translation sometimes. And yeah, who applies for funding? People who are educated already and know about the place where to go to ask for funding. And that's also a big problem, because then you leave out a lot of people who don't have access to the funding, which is public. And we should talk about easier language and maybe translation. And yeah, there's a huge problem as well with these funding organizations who are kind of, the language they use are basically for people who are already privileged to understand how
and sometimes even
it works.
they don't. I mean, these forms to fill out applications, sometimes I mean, I'm not a genius, but I don't understand that stuff sometimes.
Yeah.
I find it super hard. As maybe a non-native speaker, how should they be able to apply for it? Absolutely.
And still we all here in this room are very privileged from the perspective. Also like to, I think the reflection about it is so important. Sorry for taking the space. But I think it's also important to have like strategies, future visions, and how we envision ourselves in this world or in this place, as this cruel space or discrimination is inhabiting us. And we are like constantly, or many of us, I don't want to have this we and they thing, I'm sorry, but as many people are very much preoccupied, artists, to deal with who am I, where do I belong to, rather than actually grasping in what space I am. And my music, as you said, like being always asked those questions of, what's your background? How is it like as a woman in this or as that? So like being there, being acknowledged, it took me a while to understand this. When I enter the rap sphere, I'm seen as boobs. I have to first work on the fact, because of, but not only the rap scene, it was not different when I entered very like super academic spaces. I'm seen as a flying carpet sometimes, or whatever is going on in their minds. So just to acknowledge that, okay, we have to do a lot of listening, practicing also thinking of a practice that is, that embodies really intersectionality, not intersectionality as a buzzword, like really in our practices, and it's a never-ending process until, yeah, it's like drip by drip, day by day. And I think this is why also having perspectives, because we all, in some kind of way, we need networks, we need communities, associations that represent us in all our diversities, because we are all diverse inside of us. Diversity is not only the other Flinta, or do you only have one identity inside of you? We are so much inside of ourselves. So speaking of the arts, also like to fulfill the task why I'm actually here. Just to also like to inform you about the arts, because I find it really cool to have a place where I said, okay, this is an association that invites a lot of actors that don't feel represented, that don't feel seen in the cultural landscape, and been working together also on a letter of intent of what is the criteria somehow, how do we navigate, like even in having dialogue. So there were a couple of interventions of the arts I found very prospering, which was a discursive kind of event, which was called Politics of Listening, How to Be an Ally and Have the Exchange, Politics of Resisting Voices and Amplifying Voices from the Margins, as we shout so much and actually no one hears, but maybe doesn't want to. So, and there were also collaborations with big institutions in opening doors, in also like where resources were shared, where there were like bridges made, and with all like also the radical criticism, and with all like understanding how ambivalent and violent everything is. I think this legacy of people that try to build bridges into institutions are very important, because ich will Migration Vielzahl, legal scheiß auf Visa everywhere. I want to see Flinters, I want to see like everywhere. Yeah, not tokenized, but really having a fair share, not only the crumbles. So there were also like about the democratization of music and musical practice. It was a cooperation also with the Musikverein. I don't know if you know this institution, but it's a very conservative institution that opened their door in order and hosted migrant artists like Golna Shahyar, Sakine was there, also Basma, I think. And yes, it's a lot of activity ongoing, and it becomes, so to say, also like a space where like I became a member of the arts somehow, and I'm also standing here and representing it. It tries to build a policy bottom up. Yeah. You can follow the arts on Instagram. Take out your phone.
And
following
these
me.
Organizations on
Like
Instagram, and as you should if you haven't already. Now, because we only have like 5 minutes left, I would like to once again come back to your networks and maybe ask you what are so far in your work for this network, with this network, what are your most important learnings? What went well? What can you recommend? What maybe didn't work out as well?
Can I start?
Yeah.
So yeah, this was my first time coordinating MIWEM, so obviously there was a lot of learning to do. I'm going to focus on the good outcomes, but also address what I would have done differently if I was going to start it now. I see so many, I see this thriving network that is kind of, just started with MIWEM, and also I know that there's other Flinter meetups happening now, and it's like just this, it's really like a great foundation for a lot of things to happen, and people work together actually in paid positions and still in mentoring situations. So I had a lot of positive feedback on that, but I definitely would say that MIWEM has a very individual approach, and it's not to be underestimated also the personal issues, challenges, needs that have to be considered and addressed also, more carefully sometimes, and in a way that respects everybody. So this is something that I definitely learned, and what I now, luckily, actually today we just published the MIWEM Hub. It's basically here when you click on resources. We've been working on this resource center for the past year basically, and it's a lot of video tutorials, tips from mentors, mentees, project coordinators like me and my colleagues, if somebody wants to implement a mentoring in their organization or company. So yeah, so basically a lot of learnings and things that can be done differently are found there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I think my learning is that this kind of work that we do is very important, but at the same time it takes a lot of effort, and you have to be like 150% dedicated to do to try to change something. And I'm really proud of what the network has achieved in the past, but that was only possible through people who have access to people in higher positions to ask for funding, or who have good connections to make things happen, and who are dedicated to do that without being paid, or without being paid as much as they should be. So I don't know. What I ask myself sometimes is how to grow as this network, or without getting people be burnt out. So yeah, that's not so positive in that way, but yeah, there's a lot of great achievements, but I think all these networks need to have some kind of better support in a way to, yeah, find a solution for this problem.
Absolutely.
Okay. Maybe for the arts, like I'm more from like an inside-outside view. I think what is happening and what is changing is that there is a discourse placed within so many voices. So it's this mobilizing so many people, inviting so many people to have an exchange and to think of strategies and also support systems for each other. So I think there's like a new wind kind of like, and so this togetherness, let's say, I think this is what I find it's amazing about the arts and the transformation that like as if it's like a body and there's so many different veins coming from different directions and spaces, but the heartbeat is such an impulsive, intense for transformative justice, for visibility, for more approaches to critical diversity, and also demands for change. So it gets very concrete somehow. Yes, for myself, like what did not work so well, or what worked well, or what was the question?
Yeah.
Yes. Well, it's very beautiful to see that there are so many people that care. Actually, it's so I feel like it needs the space and it needs probably resources so we can nurture each other somehow through this long fight, probably, or the demands. As I see many of us as survivors of institutional violence in the music industry, in the arts industry, through the exclusion. I think, like, my wish is that we become thrivers in this, so that it's not such a lone and painful space where we burn out, or but find spaces where we can create those brave spaces to inside out, and yes, also use resources of institutions that maybe don't want to change structures, but at least in supporting each other. I think this is what I've learned also in my journey of the last months.
I will try to keep it short. I see the time, so I know. I think so. From my perspective with Key Change, what has really worked absolutely well, and we will continue making use of this and really pushing for it, is the Manifesto for Change that we published in 2018. We released it at the European Commission, much shorter than the one you mentioned, with the document you made in Germany. For us, it was with 4 areas, and each 4 area, like 4 or 5 bullet points, so like really readable and actionable, and a lot of stuff. I mean, it was a very golden moment because we presented that at the within the European Parliament, but toward the European Commission, but that worked on local, national, European level, and also targeting the music industry itself. And what we saw, we advocated for gender equality funding, and that's, I mean, the fact that there is dedicated data collection within the new funding of Creative Europe, specifically on European level. We know that there is a direct link. It's not only us by far, but we know that we were at the right place at the right time to just hammer this nail further and be like, we demand that you need to collect the data for any public funding you give. This needs to be there. We are going to do a new version in 2024, and what we do is that we work with grassroots, with organizations, with all the conversation we are part in. We take notes and we bring that forward without saying that this is a word of Key Change. It's a word of the world music community, so it's also giving credits where credits are due. It's not us, it's all of us together. It's not just Key Change having a voice, it's really just representing this world change. And the fact that the pledge, we have more and more signatories and more massive organization, and really, like, I mean, the EBU has signed where you're like, okay, seriously, the EBU wants to be gender equal. Cool, let's do that, let's work together. So infiltrating institutions and working on that and making sure to continue this conversation is really important. What I think we've not done as well, and another part where I'm worried about, what we haven't done as well is care for our alumni, because we didn't put it in the funding, and therefore we don't have any way to support people who have engage with us. We're like, okay, that's too bad. We have created a network of 200 people and we can't do anything for them. So like, okay, let's rethink that. And that's really something we want to work on and make sure that we don't leave people behind and use them, but really make sure that we can continue supporting people. And you mentioned care before. That's really something I'm really curious about, and how we can use privilege from organizational spaces and make sure that this continues being distributed. A really big concern I have at this moment is, I mentioned that a lot of people during the pandemic were like, okay, I have time to reflect, I want to change stuff, I want to engage in activism. BIPOC voices also being like, yeah, well, we need more representation, and then all of a sudden being silent again. I think with the post-pandemic system in which we are now, with the concern for the economy, with the inflation raising, the place of women and gender minorities is very much silent again. The exclusion is ramping. It's very difficult to claim this space. It is present in some spaces that will continue being there, but I think it's really necessary to continue claiming that, and it's tiring, and we are all exhausted of 2 years of pandemic. I mean, we all went through this at the same time. I know all of you in this room have been through that as well, and we are pretending as if like, yeah, business as usual, plus we need to make money, plus every recovery fund is being exhausted, but we need to care for each other in that and make sure that it's not business as usual. It has to change, and it has to change now, and it has to change tomorrow as well. So that's really...
Yesterday.
And, yeah, but that's, that was yesterday. We partied yesterday, like we forget about yesterday. So, moving on, continuing that, and yeah, we are all there. I mean, I think all of us here on this panel are probably happy to continue doing this with all of you, and just engage with us, and I'm happy to lift you up, but we need this engagement to continue. That's really just to finish.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Now, unfortunately, we are out of time, and I wanted to make 2 quick announcements before I let you go. Namely, one, as you can never have enough Flinter networks, I'm super happy to announce that we are organizing a new Flinter network in Vienna for Flinter musicians and music professionals. It's called Flinter Music Meetup. You can find us on Instagram, where we're building a database of Flinter musicians and Flinter music professionals, as well as schedule regular meetups in nice, intimate spaces, but every Flinter person can come, and the first one will happen in mid-October, but if you follow us on Instagram, we will keep you updated on that. Flinter Music Meetup, just again. And the second one is that there's actually an open call now for female creatives, or rather Flinter creatives. And I would like to quickly read this text about this call. It's in German because it's mostly directed to German speakers. So it's from the Wirtschaftsagentur. And so mit dem Call Female Creatives fördert die Wirtschaftsagentur Wien von Frauen, Sternchen, geleitete Projekte aus den Bereichen Multimedia, Film und Musikwirtschaft. Im Fokus stehen die Entwicklung und Umsetzung kreativwirtschaftlicher Produkte, Dienstleistungen oder Prozesse. And I think Ms. Hammer is, yes, so if you have any questions about this open call, please go to Evelyn Hammer and she will explain everything about this to you. So that was it from my side. Thank you so much to my wonderful panelists for taking the time, for being here and discussing and sharing your experiences. It's been a pleasure, and I guess you will be here for some questions because the audience was rather shy. Which is okay, though.
We didn't give them so much space, let's be honest.
Also true. So for questions, we're here. Thank you so much. Thank you very much.
Ich bin der Schlüsselmacher. Aber ich mache nicht einfach nur Schlüssel. Ich verschaffe dir Zugang zu den besten Geschichten der Welt. Denn meine Schlüssel bringen dich überall hin und können alles mit dir machen. Ist der hier für dich?
Unlock great stories. Kanal Plus. Streamt großartige europäische Serien und Filme.